Okay, so we're going to create some work now to do, and we're going to do that in our tool that we use for that called Jira. And you can do this from pretty much anywhere in Jira. There's lots of different views. I'm starting from one of the board views of a team, but that's okay. If we're going to create an item, there's lots of different ways to do it. The most simple, use the Create button. And then you're going to make sure you pick your project. In this case, we're working in this commercial appetite tool. You could search for other projects. This will typically default to the last project you were on. So if you're working on one project, that will be there for you. What type of issue do you want to log? We work mostly, as we've covered, with stories, tasks, bugs, enhancements are big things. There's a few different things in here. We'll talk about epics in a second. So we're going to do a story. We're going to do a summary. So we want the summary to be something that is meaningful, that when this shows up on a release note for a customer, that they'll understand what this feature was, because a story is a feature delivered to a customer. So you want the summary to be something that's meaningful. So in this case, let's say for the commercial appetite tool, we want to the mobile application for commercial appetite. And again, you can use any sort of things here. As we get to the description, here's where we want to use some of the what we call the Gherkin language or the user story language. So we could be doing as a mobile customer, I want a mobile application so that I can interact on the go. And again, that's probably pretty big. You'd probably break this down into much smaller chunks, but just for this visual, we'll do it this way. Story points we'll get to in a second. You could assign them here, but you probably do that a little bit later. Acceptance criteria, this is really important. This is to indicate what is okay and what the user is expecting to get here. So again, there's a language here. So given that I am using the mobile app, when I enter my password, then I will gain access to the app. And then you could do multiple given, and you could just kind of keep going. Obviously, this is a very broad story, so I wouldn't actually write one like this. It would be much more specific, in this case, probably to a logon, but you get the idea. The assignee might leave as automatic for now, as it's going to sit in the backlog. The reporter, the epic link is down here. This is basically a grouping of stories into a group. In this case, we could say connected just to the commercial appetite tool. And then we would create. If you're creating multiple stories, you could hit create another, and you could put a bunch of stories in here. There's different ways to create stories. You could do it directly from Confluence and things like that. But this is the basics of how to create work. Again, you can go and you could create a task. A task is probably going to have, it's not going to use the language. It's probably going to be much more simplistic. Something like get a laptop. Then you might say need to procure a laptop to procure something. Story points, it still will have story points because it's a certain amount of effort as we get into that. Acceptance criteria, you might be a little less verbose here on the acceptance criteria for getting the laptop, but maybe you want to be pretty specific. Needs to be a developer laptop, a dev laptop, and then you're going to have an assignee reporter, and it's still going to have an epic link, and you'll create your tasks. And that's the basics. So if you're doing testing and you find a bug, you'll fill out similar fields and you'll create your bugs. And this is how we create the pile of work that becomes our backlogs in our sprints.